We've had veggies in our root cellar for 6 months now. Let's show you what they look like after 6 months of storage. It is considerably cooler down here than outside. We got all of these veggies in here about October last year, probably a little bit earlier, maybe some towards the very end of October. But it is April now, so that's 6 months that these things have been down here storing. And I want to show you just what they look like so that maybe you could think about if a root cellar is worth it for you with what you want to do. So we have potatoes, carrots, beets, and we did have sweet potatoes down here. Those are all gone. But let me just start with the potatoes. The main reason that we wanted a root cellar was for potatoes. And let me just grab a couple. So you can see they look kind of like the day they were dug. This one is starting to eye out a little bit, but it's really not bad considering they've been stored for 6 months at least. Let me show you inside of this one. I see a couple more eyes going on in here. See that? But this is our top bucket. Let's see what the bottom bucket looks like. There's quite a bit more going on in there. Okay. This variety is Pinto Gold. These are a Harvest Moon, and this variety, I don't see any eyes at all really happening on those three buckets. So those are actually coming out pretty good as far as how they've been storing in here. And the great thing about this is these will be our seed potatoes for this coming garden season. And normally at about April, our seed potatoes that we have somehow managed to keep through the winter in like a crawl space or something like that, they are eyeing out much worse than this. These potatoes also taste really good too, which is awesome considering they have been stored for so long. Normally in the spring, our potatoes that we have grown the previous year, they start to kind of be less than favorable, I guess. And this year, they're really good still. And I should also comment on the texture. They are very firm still. They're not mushy or anything like that going on. So that is pretty awesome that they've held up so well. And so far, it's been really great to have. So let's see, a variety back here. We have our red potatoes that we've been growing for a long time. I don't see any eyes really growing on these ones. Back here we have, well, sweet potatoes that did end up going moldy, and we didn't end up using these ones. So just to show you that. Not everything's perfect. Back here, huckleberry golds. These look fantastic, actually, with how they're holding up. They are just firm as a rock still, like really hard. That's a root. That's not an eye. Even this one that was a little bit scraped. It's firm. It's looking really good. We also have some canned items down here. We haven't lost any jars since putting them down here. As far as our pickled items go, we keep down here, and those have been doing really well. We did end up putting, oh, I probably should have put these inside the house. Some garlic. This is kind of sad. I don't really want to show it off. But I see mold, and I see they're a little soft, and some of them are starting to sprout. So I'm going to take this inside and see if this is salvageable at this point. It might not be, though. We'll see. Might try to plant out some of these in the spring, see what they do. I'm not really sure, but I realized this should have probably not been kept in here. This should have probably been kept in our pantry. In a environment that wasn't as moist, or like in the fridge or something, might have probably been better. So we'll take this inside. Another thing that we have in here are carrots. Were in damp sand. The sand isn't quite as damp anymore as how it started. But let me pull up some carrots for you. We have been filling them up lately. It's kind of just a fishing around in here mission to get one. That's a big one. Look at that one. It's firm. It has a bunch of little like hairs growing on it, or roots growing on it, I guess. They just look like hairs. I call them that. But it is really firm. Down here is a little less firm, but we'll take this one inside. Here's another one. And we'll take this one inside, and I will show you just what they look like inside. We've been eating on these lately, and they taste really good still at this point, which is really nice to have. So I'll take these three inside, clean them up, and show you what they look like. Inside, this is what they're looking like. Outside, straight out of the sand, but they are pretty firm. I can smell them from here. They have a really good carroty smell. So we'll take those in with us. It is time to try one of these carrots out. I know they're good, but just want to show you. That is so much better. That is so much better than carrots you can buy at the grocery store that don't really taste like much of anything. This still tastes like a carrot. It is a little less of that fresh carrot taste that you get like with your fresh pulled carrots, but it is still really good and it's pretty close to a very fresh pulled carrot taste, just a little bit degraded as far as the quality. But if I had a choice of eating that or buying a bag of carrots at the store, baby carrots, big carrots, whatever, I'd pick this. Because I know how these were grown, and that's important to know where your food comes from. Really crunchy still, too. And you saw when I was peeling these and cutting these were not the prettiest of carrots, but they still definitely taste pretty good. I keep skipping over the beets because we probably won't eat these. I just wanted to put them in here to see how they would overwinter because I heard you could just overwinter them by putting them in a root cellar and you didn't need to do anything special. And oh, I guess I agree with that, but they are kind of soft. There is a little bit of mold, like moldy growth on them, I guess. Um, if I was hungry, I'd probably eat them. But we have a bunch of canned beets and we're going to be growing new ones pretty soon. These will probably just get composted at this point. This was kind of just an experiment to see how these would do. And you can also see these were nibbled by critters out in the garden. That's why they just came in here to see how they would overwinter. And that's my findings on how they overwintered. They did stuff like this. And I know they're vultured, but that's kind of what we had to work with to do the experiment to see how they would end up in the root cellar. Because having a root cellar is something completely new to us. And that's the reason I'm making this video, to kind of show other people out there what is possible and how our produce is holding up after 6 months. Because having a root cellar is something that we don't really talk about in modern society as much, so we wanted to make this video to put that out there. Let's check these out. I haven't looked at these. Oh man. So I ordered some bulbs a while back and they came when our ground was rock hard and frozen with ice and snow. So I put them in here thinking, oh, we might be able to just kind of get them through, and look at what we have. They're rotten. So that was, I guess, not the best method to try to keep these bulbs to get them to a time of the year when we could plant. Should have probably just stuck them in the fridge. Lesson learned. Gotta learn somehow. And the other thing that we have down here is a beehive. And we put this in our last video that we were experimenting with one beehive inside the root cellar and one beehive outside behind a building where it was shielded from the wind and all of that to try to get our bees through the winter. These bees lived until about January. And at that point in January, we noticed them up in this top super up here. And they were a little bit noisy. And every time we would try to peek in there, they would kind of start flying out. And we didn't want them flying out everywhere. So we just kind of left them. Turns out they needed more food. And they essentially, unfortunately, ended up starving. I'll show you what they look like. I mean, it's a dead hive. So not that one. This is where the winter feed patties were, and they are just completely gone. Probably not going to be able to bust one of these out. But there's no action going on in here. So our experiment did not work this year. These did make it longer than our bees that were outside, though. The outside bees didn't starve. They died of possibly being too cold or wind or moisture or something like that. These ones hung on a lot longer, but these ones needed some sort of food to keep them going, and we didn't know that. So our mistake, and this didn't work out for us this year. Not sure if we're going to do bees again or what we're going to do next year. Live and learn on that one. This root cellar is 8 by 12 interior dimensions, and it is pretty large. Like you can see, we didn't need all of that space this year. Next year, we're hoping to have more stuff in here, but this year we didn't utilize all the space. So just to kind of give you an idea of how big this was. And obviously you can see we need shelving and all of that and a little bit better organization. So next year, that is what we'll do. This was our first winter with the root cellar, if I didn't already mention that before. And that's kind of why we're giving you updates to show you how things did in our first winter with the root cellar, because it is very new to us. And like I said, not something many people talk about. And over our winter in Montana, the lowest it got in here was 34.8 degrees as far as That's Fahrenheit. And the humidity stayed at about 75%. We did end up at one point when we got a really big cold snap, we ran a extension cord wire through one of these pipes right here. Show you these through one of the vent pipes, and we ended up bringing a space heater in here. So we ended up running that space heater for like 3 hours, and it got it up to way too hot, like 60 degrees. So we unplugged it. And the whole thing that we did with the space heaters, we probably didn't need to do. We were just kind of worried about it. And we didn't know how much it would dip, being that we were kind of right on the edge, close to freezing. We just didn't want to risk ruining all of our seed potatoes, really. It was probably an unnecessary step. I should also comment on our vent pipes. In our other videos, we shared that we use 3-inch vent pipes. So the vent I just showed, and then there's one in this corner up here. And 4 inches are recommended as far as vent pipe diameter, and I think I might know why now. So over the winter, when it did end up getting really cold at one point, the pipe did kind of freeze solid throughout it with all the moisture that was in the pipe and everything, and we had to kinda, like, break that loose. And that was right around the time where my husband put the extension cord down the pipe anyway, so we kinda figured out, "Oh, that might be the reason why a bigger vent pipe is recommended, so that that moisture can't create a complete solid ice cap inside of your pipe." So, lesson learned, and it really only affected us at that one point. I don't really think it affected us any other time throughout the winter, and we didn't really notice any differences down here. I'm sure moisture wasn't allowed to escape probably as much, and probably like the fumes from the food, like the gases that they let off, weren't allowed to escape for that brief period of time. But that's just something to keep in mind. A viewer did recommend that we should insulate these pipes, so we'll probably end up doing that next year. That was a really good recommendation, so thank you for leaving that recommendation. And another comment that was asked last time is if we have screen on the top of the 2 vent pipes, and yes, we do. We don't want any rodents or anything coming down here, or bugs or whatever, so there is some fine mesh screen on the top of both of the vent pipes. And while we're talking about everything root cellar, right now it is April, and it's about 65 degrees outside. We kind of have an unseasonably warm snap again, and this is kind of what Montana does. We'll get really warm and then we'll get really cold in the spring, but it is about 39 degrees in here, so it is definitely holding a nice temperature at the current time. It is very bright out here. So another question that was asked is if this filled with snow last year, and last year it did not fill with snow. There were maybe 2 instances that we got a big dumping of snow, and my husband came and shoveled out around the door. Shh, quiet. But we really didn't notice any issues with moisture running down into here so far. Something else I should say that's on the plans for this year is dealing with the mound on top of the root cellar. Last year, we pretty much just got it covered up and then winter came. So this year we want to get it kind of flattened out, and we want to plant something on top of it. Probably some form of grass, maybe something as far as like perennial wildflowers or something. I'm not totally sure, but we want to make it look a lot nicer and help it hold this dirt on, especially when we get a lot of wind. We don't want all of the top of the root cellar blowing away. So that about wraps up this video. 6 months into a root cellar, and our thoughts are so far, we're really glad we did it. Really just for our seed potatoes to get them through. It was also a nice place to have for hanging meat when we did get an elk or a deer. That was really an added benefit as well. And now we have the space to fill this next year, so that's what we're doing. We're getting the garden going, and if you're interested in seeing how the gardens end up and all of our plans for the year, please consider liking and subscribing, because there's a lot that we're trying to do for the 2025 growing season. Thanks for watching.